Candidate Forum. I'm Ray Donadio, and I will be the moderator for this evening. I first want to thank all of you for being here, for showing your interest in our city, as evidenced by your attendance. And hopefully you folks will be better informed after the program. I want to start by setting down some of the ground rules. These are the same rules we've used in prior forums. I'm going to have each of the candidates have 2 minutes to make an opening statement. Questions will then be asked, and they'll be asked in a rotating format, and each candidate will have 2 minutes for their response. I have a timer here. Unfortunately, all of you in the crowd can see it, but the candidates can't. So Debbie Connors, our executive director, has a 30-second warning and then a time's up warning. At the end of the evening, I'll have each candidate close with a 2-minute time for remarks. I would just ask that, in keeping with previous forums, that the audience not have any applause during the commenting, during the question and answer period, and that you please refrain from any audible signs of assent or dissent. So we can keep this very professional, as we have in the past. With that, I'm going to open it by having each of the candidates give an opening remarks. And the candidates are in alphabetical order from left to right, since we read from left to right. So we'll start with, the other thing is, I can go with Mr. Burnett, Mr. Green, and Mr. Noftel, but I think I'm going to be a little less formal than that, and I'll refer to you gentlemen by your first names. So Don, if you would, if you'll give us an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Donadio. Oh, I'm sorry, Ray. Good evening, everybody. First of all, I want to thank all of you for coming, because it shows great interest in a great community to have a good crowd of people here who really care about what's going on in Port Orange. And I appreciate the fact that you're taking time out of your day to learn more about us, all three of us, so that you can make an informed decision for yourselves. And I think that's important. Reason being is there are a lot of people that are going to tell you who you should vote for and why. Know a little bit more about the candidates, know a little bit more about their personalities, know a little bit more about their backgrounds, know a little bit more digging underneath the surface will tell a little bit about all three of us here and really help you make a good decision about who's going to be the mayor of Port Orange for the next 4 years. Because honestly, the mayor, who is the trendsetter, the person who's supposed to set the vision and set the pace for the council, isn't just going to set the tone for the next 4 years, but a real visionary is going to think 10, 15, 20 years out or more and then work backwards to fill in that vision. And part of that vision doesn't just come from the leadership of an individual, but from the community at large. I think whoever the next mayor is needs to be in touch with the community and know what their wants and needs are. Being able to balance those wants and needs with the ability to pay for those is what makes the community special. And Port Orange is special and unique, make no doubt about it. I'm very proud to have served on City Council the last 6 years. I think that I have had a very effective record. Certainly am proud of my record. You can take a look at it. I'm certainly happy to have my family here tonight supporting me, and I want to thank them. And I want to thank all of you for the time and your consideration tonight, and I hope to earn your vote on August 30th.
Lance?
Thank you, Ray. And again, good evening, everyone. My name is Lance Green. And as I look out here tonight, I don't really see any unfamiliar faces. What I see is a lot of familiar faces and people who know who I am and where I come from. I come from a long line of leadership in Port Orange. My family dates into Port Orange back to 1910. I'm up here tonight because I care about Port Orange and I care about where we go. I care about the leadership in Port Orange. I care about where we go in the next 20 years. I also care about keeping our community safe and keeping our city a great place to live that we call home. What I want to provide is the leadership for the next 20 years. I want to follow the vision that our previous leaders and my dad and Mr. Ward and Judy Anderson, a lot of our other leaders, and the vision that they've had over the years of what Port Orange is today, which was from dirt roads to a city that we are modeled after. Other states and other cities around our state model what Port Orange is because of it's a great place to live and it's a great community. I'm going to provide a leadership that's going to be firm and effective. We're not going to make everybody happy. We're going to do what we can afford, but we're also going to keep a level of service that we've become accustomed to in Port Orange and a way of life we want in Port Orange. But the main thing for me, I want to keep Port Orange safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. Ted?
Hello, friends and neighbors. My name is Ted Knopfel, and I'm running for mayor of Port Orange for very simple reasons. Under our form of democracy, citizens are meant to be the ultimate bosses and the ultimate benefactors of government. But in Port Orange, the opposite is the case. Council, including the mayor and the manager, operate under different rules than you and I. At last Tuesday's council meeting, I pointed out that a councilman is in violation of Florida statute, which states the use of the city logo without council's express approval is a second-degree misdemeanor, punishable by a $500 fine and/or up to 60 days in jail. Council did nothing to one of their own. Yet just a short while ago, that same council gleefully placed a lien on a single-wide home of a 74-year-old widow because she couldn't pay a $3,000 water leak bill. That, my friends, is a double standard, and that is disgusting. To use a $3,000 hammer against a disabled senior citizen living on Social Security while not even slapping the wrist of one of their own is intolerable and has to change. The first order of business after I'm elected will be to open city government to public view. Government in the sunshine is not only a legal requirement and the right thing to do, it will result in a more efficient and accountable Port Orange. Secret meetings between the mayor, auditors, managers, developers, contractors, and everyone else who has their hand in taxpayer pockets will come to an end. The things you will hear me say tonight are things that I have said for years. My message has not changed because my principles have not changed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. We'll begin this evening in rotating order. First question directed first to Ted Knopfel. Ted, what qualifications do you possess which will enable you to be the mayor of Port Orange, a city of over 56,000 residents?
Ray, I guess my qualifications are both personal and professional and personal. Professionally, I was a public accountant for 20 years, and I've run J&M Moving and Storage for just about 20 years. That means I've been a self-employed businessman employing others for most of my working life. The other qualification I have is my personal interest. I've sat in that chair right down there for more years than I want to think about, following the Port Orange political story. And as I outlined earlier in my opening, it needs to change. Port Orange needs to be far more concerned, Port Orange government that is, needs to be far more concerned with the common interests of its residents as opposed to the special interest that gets such a fine ride here in Port Orange.
Thank you. Lance?
Thank you. My qualifications come down to my experience of being in this community, being at the other end of the table of a leader who's been in Port Orange for 30 plus years of leadership, watching the decisions be made, but being involved in my community, being involved in sports, athletics, the planning board, etc. I'm also a businessman. I know what it takes to run a business. I know what it takes to employ people and also how you treat people, how you respect your people. At the same token is I know Port Orange. I know most everybody in our city. It's a big city, but I still know a lot of people. So being known is a big ticket here. So somebody that the people can communicate with instead of the negativity that we continue to get within our leadership here by my opponent here. But again, it comes down to Port Orange being run like a business, treating our taxpayers like investors, and treating them right for everyone and be fair to everyone.
Thank you. Don?
Thank you, Ray. I think if you take a look at all of our qualifications, all of us bring something to the table, and it's up to you to evaluate what's important to you. I can say that I am the only one that sits up here that has 6 years of experience sitting on this council as a two-term councilman. I think it starts with that. I also feel like I have developed, in that time with that experience, good judgment. Certainly not judgment that's beyond the inability to make a mistake. We all do that. But when you make mistakes, the best thing you can do as a first-year councilman is learn from that so your second year is better. Learn from the things you did your second year so that by the time you get to your 6th year, you feel like you're seasoned and prepared for what's next. And I do feel like I'm prepared for what's next. Educationally, I have a master's degree in business administration. So I have an advanced business degree. I have assorted experiences in business. I like to think that my lifelong experiences here in this community with me and my family help make me as qualified as anybody else up here. I can sit here and say that I've done things, both big and small. Sidewalks on Herbert Street in front of Silver Sands where 2 kids got struck by a car one year may seem like a small thing for somebody driving through the neighborhood, but for somebody that lives there or walked that terror every day, it was a big thing. And I feel good about being able to do things like that. The things that don't necessarily show up in the newspaper or on the radio, but make a difference in people's lives every day, that's the gold. And that's what I feel like I can bring to Port Orange as its next mayor. I'm certainly open. Certainly want to listen to all the input that I can possibly get, but at the end of the day, a mayor has to run a council by consensus decision, and that takes the ability to work within a team framework. And I think I can do that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Candidates will now, our second question will begin with Lance Green. Lance, what qualities do you possess that would differentiate you as the best person to be the mayor of Port Orange?
Ray, I think it's going to be my people skills. I possess the ability to communicate, to listen, and to get things done. Again, being from homeschool here, from the dirt roads to where we sit today, I've had the pleasure of meeting a lot of people and communicating with a lot of people, and I know what it's going to take to talk to the right people from here to the county to the state level to get things done for Port Orange. So my people skills are what's going to be one of my biggest assets.
Thank you. Don, what qualities do you possess that would differentiate you as the best person to be the mayor of Port Orange?
Well, Ray, I think you've heard some of those things already, but I'm a big believer that you have to lead a purpose-driven life. At least that's what is one of the main ingredients that makes my life worth living, that I feel like I can make a difference in the lives of other individuals. The things that I've volunteered in and still do, I've been on the Salvation Army's advisory board for the last 12 years, the last 10 as treasurer. I've been involved in Volusia County Schools for a long time, and still am. I'm the PTSA Vice President at Atlantic High School. I'm also on the Atlantic High School Advisory Council and the Atlantic High School's Law and Government Academy Advisory Board, and that's a mouthful. I think it's important to be involved in the community in a number of ways, other than just serving as a council person or as next mayor, because this is what keeps you in touch with the wants and needs of your community, and people can communicate with you. I think I'm accessible. I think that I get around. I think that, and certainly a lot of people have called me because my cell phone number is what's on the website. Nobody else answers. It's me that you get. And I think leading that purpose-driven life to want to make a difference in people's lives, at the end of the day, I feel good because I can go home. I can look my wife in the eye. I can look my kids in the eye. And I'm very proud. I want to set a good example for my boys as they grow up. And I think that if God can walk with me every day, I can make a difference in the lives of many people in this city.
Thank you, Don. Ted, what qualities do you possess that would differentiate you as the best person to be mayor of Port Orange?
Ray, I'm going to give 2 points in my answer. The first is my ability to understand complex decisions. And my second ability is my willingness that I've demonstrated for years to conduct open, honest discussions of the issues before us. So many problems linger in Port Orange because up here on this dais is the last place you'll ever see open, honest discussion. Everything has to be kicked down the road. We've got to be politically correct on every issue, and we try and make up for that, we compensate for that in our private meetings with the manager. That is not the basis on which this government is designed and is meant to operate. It's meant to be government in the open in Port Orange. And if we for one time would have an honest discussion, I think we would solve so many of our problems.
Thank you. Don, with an eye towards problems, describe for us what processes you use to problem solve.
That's a great question because I think it, first of all, depends on the complexity of the problem. But first of all, you got to examine things with an open mind and be willing to come to council and say, I've examined this, I've read, I've questioned, and I may come with preconceived notions based on the things and the information I have at hand, but be prepared to change your mind. Some people said, I didn't expect you to vote that way based on a conversation I had. Well, I tell you what, I serve with a very good council. And those people bring good arguments. And if you have good, honest, open debate between good, honest, open people, you can have your mind changed. And it has happened. And I think that's what you got to do. You've got to prepare. You've got to study. And you got to be able to know the right questions to ask. And that's not always the easiest thing to do. Because as a council person or the mayor, you're expected to set policy for a city, but you can't know everything and you can't be an expert on everything. So you have to be able to tap the people who know. You know, I have to rely on the experts when it comes to water utilities. I'm not an engineer, but I do know things that make sense. So I have an idea of how to ask the questions in a way that, in a policy-driven manner, so I can set good policy, we can have good discussions as a council and move forward.
Thank you.
Ray, repeat that question for me.
Actually, I'm going to repeat it for Ted, and then you're going to be third.
Well, in that case, he said what I was going to say.
Ted, describe what processes you use to problem solve.
Well, problem solving in the context of this chamber here, the process has got to be open discussion, honest discussion. How often do I sit down there and say the right questions are not being asked, and why aren't they being asked? Either council has not thought of those questions, or they're not prepared to ask those questions in public. I am. I do my homework typically, and I am not shy about saying what needs to be said when it needs to be said. We can hide behind this policy all we want, but in the end, the buck stops right here at this dais. This council is responsible for ensuring how Port Orange is run. And the manager may well be employed as a manager, but the notion that we're going to give him more authority than what he needs I just don't agree with it. I've argued for charter change. That is something that you'll hear me advocate if I make it to this dais. Now, charter change cannot come from the dais alone. It has to go back to the people. But we need changes. Authority needs to be shared between council and the manager when it comes to the hiring, evaluation, and termination of major department heads. I have sat here and watched this council allow a manager to hire other deadbeat managers as a finance director and as a utilities director, failed managers in their own towns, dismissed in their own towns, but yet they come to this town and we put them in a position that they know nothing about. And yet apparently this was hunky-dory. The manager I speak of is Casella, and his term was about 15 months here in this town. And for 15 months, council just sat up here and allowed it all to take place. You won't see that under me. If we've got a problem, we're going to discuss it openly, and we're going to forge an answer, a decision to that problem, right here on this dais.
Lance, describe what processes you use to problem solve.
The process I would use for problem solving is exactly get informed. Be informed to the best of everything that you can do up here. Again, this council is a policy and procedure maker. Our job is to set the policies, set the procedures, and let people do their jobs. Now, I don't want to change the charter after all the years of Port Orange, but what I want to do is, again, problem solving comes down to exactly that, getting the information, deciphering the information, and making a decision to implement the decisions that you make, and again, monitor the results. But as far as changing charters, we don't need to change charters in Port Orange. Port Orange has gone a lot of years in a great direction. And with the vision of our previous leaders, Port Orange is a great place for us to live, and that's why people live here. So all of a sudden to change the charter, we don't need to do that. But as far as my problem solving goes, be informed, decipher the information, and make decisions.
Thank you. Yeah, I goofed. You probably all knew that because I didn't press the button. You were well within your 2 minutes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Debbie